Huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible. Good morning or afternoon or evening. I guess it's good evening. My name is Karine. I'm the program director with Young Adult Cancer Canada, and welcome to a new episode of We Get It. We Get It comes on Facebook Live every Monday at 7 Eastern. And we also have all our episodes living on our YouTube channel, where you can watch them with closed captioning, which is kind of neat. So welcome. I hope you're well. I changed place today. So for those of you who watch episodes regularly, I was just saying to my beautiful guests, it's kind of sunny this morning. And I was like, I want to be with my plants. I have a lot of plants in my house. So I came downstairs. And so I have a little bit of plants, a little bit of memories, my little Bruce Springsteen album cover there, and some decorations that change the vibe for me today, which feels good because let's be honest, when we work at home and we're stuck at home all the time, it feels kind of good it's almost like I'm working at a different office today. And it feels all right. I put on some jewelry from my favorite Montreal designer, Anne-Marie Chagnon. If you ever really need beautiful, cool jewelry, I'm doing a total plug for her because I've been in love with that creator for years, like 20 something years. Anyway, so this is me today and I am in wonderful company. You'll say she always says that. Well, you know what? I mean it. This morning, I'm with Gabrielle Fecteau and Alexander Mandarino, I guess the full name. And we are going to spend some time talking about this awesome book, Let Go of Your Shit. Yes, we're going to say shit a whole lot in the next 30 minutes. Don't be offended. There's a purpose to it. We're not just trying to ruffle some feathers. So we're going to talk about this awesome book. For those who are listening in, or the book, basically, you can just see Let Go of Your Shit. And really, the eye of shit is a beautiful little poop shape, which we've seen a whole lot in emoticon in the last decade or however long we've been using these emoticons. But this is kind of our sweet book, and the authors, Gabrielle and Alex, are with us. Thank you. How are you both doing?
Hi, Karine. Thanks for having us on. And personally, I'm doing pretty good. I think this is a great way to start our day.
Me too.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Thank you once again for having us. And thank you for issuing a parental advisory early on, because I know it might be a little bit taxing in terms of the times we use the word shit. But yeah, I'm also joining from a wonderful place. It's really nice and sunny in Toronto, nice and early. So as Gabrielle mentioned, a great place to start.
We all agree. How about that?
Yeah.
So let's start. So I know some of our yackers, so yackers, we say affectionately, are young adults who have been connected to yak by attending some activities, would probably know who you are a little bit more and a little bit about your story. But as we're going to talk about the book and how this book came about, I would love for you to introduce yourself maybe a little bit more about who you are and also a little bit about your experience. So I'm going to start with you, Gabrielle.
Yeah. So my name is Gabrielle. I am sitting in my office. I'm very lucky. I have a full office to myself. There's my favorite chair in the background. There's some books on the side. I'm currently wearing a dress. You can only see the top, but it's a dark gray. And my hair is down for the first time in months, probably, or probably since conference. So that's a bit about me physically. I am a social worker by background. I work at YAC. That is where most of my time is spent, but I'm also a yacker. So I was diagnosed in 2015 with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I went through chemo and radiation and then was declared in remission in 2016. I connected with YAC in 2018. It feels like it's way longer than that, but it hasn't been that long. And then got involved in very in almost all capacities, as a participant, as a volunteer, and now as a staff. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you. And how about you, Alex?
Absolutely. Well, following Gabrielle's footsteps, first of all, I am Alex. I'm 26 years old. As it stands right now, visually, I'm sitting in my apartment in downtown Toronto. I have a nice little background, and since it's been such a lovely morning and I have some wonderful window panes here, there is a lot of natural light, which is fantastic. I put on a nice button-up red and blue shirt with a nice blue undershirt, tried to dress up as much as I can and look well for all of our viewers. So thank you for having me there. And in a great mood, because we're obviously talking today on We Get It and with other YAC members who I adore. I connected with YAC in 2017, attended the Survivor Conference in St. John's and absolutely fell in love with it. Outside of YAC though, I love sports, I love reading, I love connecting with people. I consider myself an introvert by nature. I tend to be shy until I really get to know individuals, and then it's a completely flip the switch moment, as a lot of people might realize. But as joining YAC, I've become a YACtivist and tried to do as much advocacy work, article work, blogging, presentations as much as possible, because meeting the folks from YAC, Karine, yourself, and Leslie, and everyone involved in the community has been such a game changer in my life, and it's really set the tone for what I want to do moving forward.
Sweet. Thank you. This is awesome. This is awesome. Love having you both with me. All right. So this book. So let go of your shit. All right. I have a few accessories around me, but let's tell people a little bit about where is this coming from? What is that? It's not about toilet. It's not about any of that. It's actually not about actual shit either. What is it about? You can fight about it, or one of you can start.
Well, I'll jump in just to kind of set the tone for where the book idea itself came from, because I really do think Gabrielle deserves a lot of credit in that sense. Last year, so 2020, in about the middle of March, right as this whole global pandemic was settling in if that's the terms you want to use, we were at the Retreat Yourself in Paris, Ontario. Which was such a unique experience in itself. But when you're in a bubble in your own sense with the 30 plus people and yackers that were involved, but then also in a position where you're almost isolated from everything going on in the world, you feel that connection more and more. And Karine, you brought up the ever so famous theory within the YAC community, which is the balls of shit theory, which we will certainly speak on as this time progresses. But Gabrielle came up to me, I want to say halfway through the retreat, and she said, wouldn't it be cool if we just centered a whole book around this theory? And at first I was like, can we do it? Like, can we put together a whole book on the theory that is brought up by Karine, yourself, every time we get together at YAC? And the more I thought about it, I was thinking, well, we do a lot of, discussions with work, and this is such a popular theory, and it's great. And there's so many applications to it. Why not dive in and put together some work and explore a new media that Gabrielle and I necessarily haven't gotten a chance to in a book? And from about March of 2020, we kind of sat and ran with it, put together a structure, and came up with what is now Let Go of Your Shit, a guide for young adults affected by cancer. So that's at least where the book came from. But Gabrielle, if you want to hop in for the explanation of what it might be about, by all means.
Yeah. The book is about a lot of things, but I think at its core, it's about looking inwards and figuring out what's weighing on you. So what are thoughts, actions, feelings, situations that you're dragging along that no longer serves you in your life? And let go of your shit is about figuring out what those pieces of shit are, accepting them for what they are, and then letting them go so that you can walk feeling lighter. And that's, Karine, something that you had shared with us, and I use it so often, is everyone's allowed to walk feeling lighter. And this book is about getting you to that space where things just sit differently. And maybe you let go of the same ball of shit like 20,000 times. At one point, it's actually going to stay on the floor. And at that point, it's magical and it's worth all of the work that goes into letting go of some of what's weighing you down.
Mhm.
Yes, that's well said. And I remember actually, so for those of you who've been connected to Yak for a long time or who have been to a face-to-face event, and now I guess we started to talk about it in our online events, but I used to have, so I have a beautiful ball of shit here that I love. It's in my office. And it's a couple of Yackers who gave me that. Thank you. I have a lot of shit emoticon items, socks, all kinds of things, because I used to much less elaborated than you both did. Give this example of, we walk around with a lot of shit in our pocket, like little balls of shit that we accumulate over time. And we keep them sometimes way longer than needed. And always kind of emphasizing that it's not, we all go through things. Cancer, you know what, people, if you never had it and you don't really know people who have it and you think it's not hard, you're wrong. It's really hard on a multitude of levels, emotional one being one of them. So for me, it was more, you walk around, you take out your shit, you smell it out, you put it back in your pocket and you keep it. And eventually figuring out ways to letting go of it is, to your point, Gabrielle, a very liberating process that I really believe in, and that continuously for me, it's been a big part of my life. And I felt, well, when I heard this first time years ago in Montreal, which I searched online to make sure we were not stealing anything from this lady and could not find a thing, because my guess is she did not make her career on balls of shit. You guys have, and I love it. So yes, so let's maybe dig in a little bit more
Yeah.
so people understand, because I think you would agree in the recent years, and maybe not just the recent years, but letting go has been a concept that even sometimes it's like positivity, it's like everything. If you overuse this, it loses its meaning a little bit. And all of a sudden we almost feel pressured to have to let go of things where it is not that simple. And you have built this really beautiful process to get around this. So, how about we dig into it a little bit more?
We can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we
I
can use
think
an example if we want, if it's easier for us to get into it, or if you want to speak a little bit more about the theory, we have time. Let's do that.
one thing I definitely want to emphasize that we had discussed is the process of that eventual letting go. Because you alluded to it, Karine, it isn't just the idea of letting it go and that's great and we move forward with our lives. If it were that easy, it wouldn't be something that we theorize, let alone write a book about. So the three big pieces of eventually letting go of your shit begin with awareness. And awareness is a concept that might seem simple, but it's the idea that when we're going through, let's take cancer for an example, if we're going through a treatment, there's a lot of portions of our experience where we're not focusing on much else but what's directly lying ahead of us. A lot of times we call that survival mode. Early on in treatment, we're in positions where we are focusing on ourselves, our health, our oncology appointments, taking certain pills, making sure someone can pick up our kids from school. And we're not focusing on the events that are surrounding us and our mentalities moving forward, which is 100% understandable. But it gets to a point where we might find a point where we're starting to realize things about ourselves that we either don't like, behaviors that we're following that we aren't proud of, or thoughts that we have about ourselves or our experience that we're not really comfortable with. And that is that awareness piece of sitting and understanding, this is what is happening, but at the same time, looking at it from a non-judgmental piece. So a lot of the times, if we see things in our life that we're aware of and we really sit with them and we think about them, we tend to judge ourselves for them. But the most important thing is a lot of the times we're in positions that we didn't necessarily set ourselves up for. It's just the circumstances that we fell into. And maybe we develop thoughts, feelings, and actions based on those surroundings. And we can't necessarily take credit in a negative perspective for. So the awareness piece is important. We move forward to acceptance is acknowledging, being aware that we can sit with what's going on without feeling terrible for ourselves. I feel this way, but this is what it is. This is what I'm dealing. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I might be dealing with for the current period of time. But there's ways that we can shape our thinking about it. We don't necessarily have to say, this is what I've lost. This is the negative aspect. We can think, well, now I've put myself in this position, but what are the positives? What can I look towards? What have I gained from this experience? It's the idea of reframing your perspective on the whole concept. And then finally, you see the idea of release, which is that letting go piece. And one really important piece I want to dive into, and I don't want to completely take over the whole concept itself, but it's important that release looks different to everyone. It's not going to be, let's throw this away and it's going to stay away forever. The minute we acknowledge it, we're not going to be able to get rid of our shit. We're not going to be able to say, oh, I see it now and I can change right away. Yeah, wipe our hands with it. It's going to take a process. And a lot of the times it's about pulling it out, sniffing it, maybe putting it back for now, feeling comfortable. And it's an entire process that, as long as we do those 3 steps successfully and we take our time with them, it should lead to the results you want in letting go of whatever you're festering, you're holding on to.
Yeah, because I think you touch on a million things, and I'll want to hear your take, Gabrielle. I think what I loved the most when I was reading the book is some of what you just said, Alex. So of course, if you do these 3 steps where I'm going to become aware, it can be scary. It can be really hard to, examine the harder and darker parts and places and emotions and behaviors and thoughts. So to do that process is not always easy. I would argue is rarely actually easy. And to walk around, sometimes it stinks. Sometimes you're kind of spinning in your own shit. We hear people say that, and we know we feel stuck in some ways. But the courage and the practice of observing it and then finding a way to accept this is where I'm at now, which to your point, Alex, doesn't mean this is forever where I'm going to be, which is then walking towards letting go. But I loved how you really kind of took these steps in the book. And I encourage anyone to buy it. It's really neat and easily written and easy to kind of follow. But I love how you put this in a concrete practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Alex talked very well about the 3 stages or the 3 phases or however you want to call them. I don't think they're always as linear, but we have them linear just for clarity purposes. But as you were talking, Alex and Karine as well, I almost had like an aha moment that I wanted to share. And I'll get vulnerable here because I think that's the best way to be in this world. But I, especially at the beginning, but even up to like maybe a year ago, I had extreme fear of recurrence, like completely mobilizing my life at many points in the past years. And as you were talking, Alex, I realized that I went through the process of letting go so many times, letting go sometimes just a very small piece, which at the moment didn't feel like I was doing anything. But overall, now looking back, I'm like, I actually put in place these things. I became aware of it without being able to change it right away. Then I began accepting pieces of it and accepting my reality and accepting how hard it is, but how well I was doing at the same time. And then eventually releasing that ball of shit that was weighing me down so much over and over again. And I do mean over and over again, because I think I did it for years. And it never clicked how I had actually been able to let go of most of it. Not that it doesn't come back sometimes, but it's not as smelly and huge and full of weight. So I think a lot of what you said, Alex, was exactly what this process is. It's not easy. It's messy. It takes a lot of trusting yourself that you're doing things right and that eventually you're going to reap the benefits of all the work that you're putting into making life just a tiny bit better. I'm all for 1% changes. And I think that's a really important concept when it comes to letting go of your balls of shit, is how do I make this small so that I can keep on succeeding in small ways at letting go of my stuff. And eventually 1% turns into like 100% or 50. And that makes a big difference.
And I think I remember reading your book thinking, because I've done all kinds of processes in my life. I didn't have cancer, for those who are wondering, but I feel the privilege to talk and have multiple conversations over the last, 15 years of my career with young adults like you both. And so kind of thinking of my life, thinking of the cancer experience as well, the young adult cancer experience. One thing I was loving about the book as well is that a lot of what you just both touched on, which sometimes you go in your pocket and you pick a ball of shit that is really big, and figuring out what this is sometimes is hard, because to your point, Gabrielle, we could break it down in many pieces and process it differently. And sometimes we think it's one thing, but until you figure out, if you think of big emotions like guilt, a lot of our community members have felt guilt in a variety of ways, sometimes in relationship to their family members, friends, their experience feeling like a burden, guilt around survivor's guilt. So those who don't make it, those who are sicker than all of those things. But sometimes the emotion that comes and the thoughts that comes to you might not point you in the direction of, I think I'm feeling guilt right now, or I think I'm feeling shame right now. And until you find that piece, it's harder to kind of find ways to let go of it, because sometimes we are not as clear into what we're feeling and what is the source of that emotion. Mm-hmm. And that is hard work. But I think for me, one of the things I try and remind myself is, in this beautiful process that you describe, there are many steps, to your point, Gabrielle, many times where it may feel like we're spinning, doing the same thing over and over again, but it is a movement forward regardless. Mm-hmm. Things are transforming and happening as you are figuring this shit out. It's just a fact, even if it doesn't feel like it. Would you agree?
I would. One of my favorite parts of the book is the acceptance chapter, mostly because I think acceptance is misunderstood in many ways. There's one little drawing that, let me find it, that talks about acceptance and says acceptance looks like this is shit, and non-acceptance looks like this smells bad, this is going to ruin my day, this is, and all the commentary that comes with that one statement. And I think when you were talking about guilt, that's what it made me think of, is how sometimes it's just about sitting with something to really see what it looks like, which can open doors to being able to interact with your balls of shit very differently.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's important to, and if we're discussing like favorite parts, and one piece that I really realized, no, because you took it to a great place, Gabrielle. I don't necessarily know if it might be my favorite part, but it's the idea that you might look at, like, something might not appear as a ball of shit to you until you either go through a really down period or you look at it from a different lens. So, for example, like, I'll use the example I used in the book to touch on it, is the idea of, during cancer, I was single. I went into the treatment and the diagnosis as a single male and decided to choose that route throughout my treatment. I just felt more confident in myself that I could tackle this on my own. And after treatment had finished, and romantically, I like couldn't find my grounding. I would maybe want to talk to a bunch of different people, be more social, live this single life, not necessarily just bouncing from person to person, but just being more carefree in the situation I was in. And I thought, this is what I have to do. I missed a couple of years of cancer, of being able to hang out with my peers through university. So this is just me being my 20-year-old self a couple of years ago. And it got to a point where I was like, I want to say in October of 2019, in a place where circumstances brought me to have not like no job, no really relationship. I was living at home. Financially, I didn't feel super confident in what I had had. And I thought, well, this is actually not what I want to do. I don't want to just be bouncing from place to place. I want to be in a stable, I don't know if I'm a stable relationship at that point, but I want to be more confident in my relationships with people, that they could be secure for a longer period of time. So it didn't really settle in that I was living a life that I wasn't super confident in and comfortable with, until I was like, nobody's really around. I have some time to sit with this. Wow, there's a lot of things that I want to change about myself. And I think that because I made the decisions I made through cancer, I was a little bit more aware of what I liked, what my interests were. At least I knew myself. I felt confident being alone. But now it's about taking the next step of, I noticed this, but what can I do about it?
Yeah. And I love Alex, and I don't know if you noticed, but in everything you said, I felt no judgment of, because sometimes we're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
We judge even past events, we judge how we coped, we judged how hard, and it's like, oh, geez, we need to give ourselves a break, especially after going through something as traumatic and life-threatening and scary as cancer. And for many of our young adults, you know what? They go through it a lot in isolation before they can find their peers. So you can accumulate a whole lot of shit by yourself, thinking that you're doing things wrong when you're not.
Letting go of your shit is not about the past, and it's not about the future. It's really about this moment, and how can you make yourself feel a bit better right now. um, there's no point, it's not critical for you to go back into your past when we talk about this process. Awareness is one thing. Like, the past just doesn't not exist, but like, it does, but that's not the focus. And in the future, there's a lot of shoulds that happened. Should is often associated with how we interact with the future, and should statements and shoulds don't really work in this process of letting go either. So it's really in this moment. So it's really important to be able to be kind to yourself, that the person that you were, because you made the best calls that you ever could. I am certain of it, when you made those calls. And now you're in a very different moment, which allows you to make different calls, whatever you choose is best for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So before we go into wrapping up, I did wonder, do we want, so Alex, you gave a little of an example for you, which is in the book, which I think is great, on relationship, which I know romantic relationship is something that we talk about a lot in our community. If we wanted to give another kind of concrete example of how could this apply? So if I'm a young adult watching this episode and thinking, well, I have a whole lot of, how do I start? Or where do I start? And could we give a few pointers almost to say, first, I would say, well, just buy the book. That's step one. But aside from that, if you don't want to buy the book, how could people go about even starting? Let's say it's like, okay, I think I'm carrying a lot. What do I do now?
I think an important piece we touch on in the book is the concept of mindfulness. So it's the idea of trying your best to be in the now, be in the present, because your balls of shit, they can't live in the now. They can't be here in front of you. They're with you and associated with the past things that have happened prior to this moment. That might even be pre-cancer. Or it could be balls of shit about what's in the future. What am I going to deal with today, tomorrow, this entire year? If we're mindful, we can be more aware of the situation we're truly in so we could take steps to move forward. Now, that's kind of an overarching concept, but I know two pieces that are really important that I like to take into account are one being journaling. And I know we talk a lot about this at Yak. I find that I involve myself with these conversations a lot, but taking a chance to sit down and maybe writing down how your day went, your thoughts, your feelings, something you loved, something you're grateful for, something you didn't enjoy, writing that down and moving forward. You might get a chance to, once you write something down on paper, realize it's right in front of me. This is what I really enjoy. Let me stick to this, or this is what I want to change. Maybe I can reframe my mindset, or maybe I can take the steps to accept what I'm going through. And then the second concept of meditation. That's something that I try and do every morning. I got a chance to do it this morning. I got up a little earlier so that I could meditate and just be more calm and present and step into this day feeling like I can tackle everything that's ahead of me. And when I'm aware of what's going on in the now, I can focus on that and I can be less nervous about what I'm going to experience in my workday. So those are just two pieces that I know I take into account. And the overarching theme of being mindful is something that we can all involve ourselves with. And I think it's a big first step.
Sweet. Gabrielle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think one of the really not simple, because it's not simple, but maybe first step that doesn't have strings attached necessarily. We're not looking already at letting go of all these things, because sometimes that can be overwhelming in and of itself, thinking of how do I let go of stuff. But really just kind of sitting with yourself and acknowledging how much shit you've been through, and giving yourself a hug, or just telling yourself that you're doing the best that you can, even if you don't believe it, I think can be a really great way to start interacting with this process, because it's from that space of love and self-compassion and acceptance that the process starts. And then the other thing is around awareness. One of the strategies, I don't think we talk about it in the book, but that always comes to mind is how can I make it so I have a reminder in my environment that I do carry balls of shit around. Because I think sometimes I get caught up in the day-to-day and I need to do X, Y, and Z on my to-do list. And we have this going on and it never ends. And having a sticky note on my laptop saying balls of shit, or on the bathroom mirror, or wherever I'm going to see it every day, doesn't serve. It's not to put pressure on myself that I need to let go of all these things, but rather just kind of keep them in mind so that days and weeks don't go by without me having the time to notice that I am carrying stuff around. And then that again engages, I get to engage with the concept and my balls of shit differently when they're in mind, just there.
Yeah, this is great. I love a lot of what you both said. And one of the thing I think that I'll reinforce is definitely sometimes in life in general, with all different challenges, and cancer definitely being one of them, we are often thought, and we have observed in our lives growing up with parents and friends and whatever, that you need to take action when you are in a crisis mode. You need to take action when things are really going really bad. So you need to do something, where ultimately, I'm not saying you don't if things are horrible. Some people start therapy because it's like, oh my God, I hit rock bottom. So it's not always bad what gets you to take an action. But I do love how one of the step that is not easy is to get to a place of loving yourself for where you're at right now today, and from that kind of peaceful space that you can maybe try and cultivate, then start figuring out, okay, where do I feel I'm capable today and right now to focus? and dig and observe and change. Because sometimes when we do it in a state of shame or in a state of unworthiness, or it's really, really painful, and it might actually guide us places that are actually slowing down what we're trying to achieve. So I think you might have to do both at the same time. I know sometimes things are fucking hard and it's really difficult to even imagine what you just said, Alex, is I'm going to sit and be grateful.
Yeah.
Be grateful for what? Like some days I know, for talking to some of our community members, it is really difficult to find one thing. And we hear that. But I think even if the first practice is to start to say, I'm going to try and love me for everything I've been through to this day, for where I'm at today, it can give some clarity on how to take the next step, which I really love and really truly believe in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll speak for Alex and I, because I think I can in this situation. Maybe Alex, you can correct me if not, but we've been in those places too. Like, as much as we wrote the book now and we're sitting here with you, Karine, talking about it, the process has never been easy. And there are days where I know I couldn't even begin to understand the idea of putting any of this into practice. And that's okay too. But knowing that you're not alone in that process sometimes helps.
Yeah. And you can feel free to speak freely for myself as well, Gabrielle, because that's absolutely right. And I think it's important to note that one lesson I learned is you don't just get rid of a ball of shit and it's gone forever. There are times where it might reappear. And as scary or as that traumatizing or taxing as that might sound, the point is that you shouldn't judge yourself if that is the case, because that is part of the process. The 1% changes might get rid of a portion of it, and that might go forever. If it comes back, just think of yourself as more prepared, right? And it's okay. But you're more prepared for next time, and you think it's come back, but that just means that I can do this again. I've gone through this process before. But it's important to note that we've all gone through it, A, and B, we've all gone through it coming back. So it's just a part of the process, and we're all here for you, as Gabrielle mentioned.
I love this. And I think it's a very personal process and a very internal process. And I would say that to anyone who wants to hear it, but choose who you share the journeys that you're embarking on in your personal growth, in your healing processes, emotional and physical. Choose wisely, because sometimes before speaking out about something you're doing, it could be a bit easier to sit with it with your own self to make sure you get the clarity you need. You don't have as many external influences on how you should let go of that shit and how you should have been over this, and how people don't mean bad. People don't mean to be assholes. Sometimes they just are, because they want the people they love to do better than they are. So, especially if you're struggling right now, those who love you don't want you to suffer. So, they'll want to accelerate this process, and they'll have a whole lot of opinion, I would guess, out of love for the most part. But that's one thing I would say, because I was reading this and I was remembering some times where there were times where some of the precious people in my life I could talk to about what I was doing. But as much as I trust them with my life, it took a while before I did, because I needed to have that conversation with myself before talking to anyone else. And I think that's okay too, to give yourself that space. This was sweet. Thank you so much to both of you. I think I had like messages to take away. I feel like that's what we just did. You know, some self love and some self care and patience. And when the time is right, to connect with your peers, get the book. You can get this on Amazon.
Yeah.
Let go of your shit. And, Alex and Gabrielle are giving whatever money coming from that beautiful book to Young Adult Cancer Canada. So in my book, it is a win-win. But hey, we do good stuff, but If you don't believe it, just stick around. So let go of your shit. Gabrielle Fecto, Alex Mandarino, thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning, because for us it is morning, but for you it's the night. And as I do every Monday, I will remind all of us to remember to just breathe. Just breathe, especially if you're kind of thinking, listening to this, I think I'm going to get the book and I think I'm going to start to explore. Remember to get into that mindful presence. Just breathe. Breathe through it. You're not alone. You're not the only one dealing with shit. We all are. So take it one day at a time. Breathe and know that, well, yeah, it's got your back. Thank you both. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Hope you can join us next Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live. Thanks. Bye.